If you've ever found yourself standing at the kitchen counter eating and you're not even sure when you got there or how much you actually consumed, this episode is for you. Grief does something to us that is difficult for us to put into words. It disconnects us from our own bodies in ways that we can't always name or explain. The stress, the sleepless nights, the reaching for something, anything that feels stable or comforting when everything else has been ripped away. And so often that something is food. Today I'm sitting down with a woman that I trust deeply. We've been in coaching groups together, and I can tell you firsthand that she is the real deal. Brittany Braswell is a registered dietitian, a public speaker. She's a top-rated podcast host and the creator of the Joy-Filled Eater course. She helps Christian women break free from the food guilt, the body image struggles, diet culture, and she does it all through a faith-centered, practical approach. She's warm, she's real, she's a gift for helping women find peace with food, and I cannot wait to share her with you. This conversation is very personal for me, and I believe it is going to meet you right where you are. If you're grieving the death of your child and you want the steps that lead to believing with confidence that life is still worth living, then you're in the right place. Hello, I'm Teresa, a grief mentor that's been where you are, and I teach grieving moms like you how to navigate life after child loss. If you're ready to take a step of courage and build a solid foundation to live with hope and purpose, then I'm here to teach you how. Are you ready for what God has for you? Then I'm ready to teach you. Welcome, Brittany, to the Grief Mentor podcast.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I'm so excited to get to talk to you today.
I've been looking forward to this conversation for ever since we scheduled because I know I'm so excited for you to bring your expertise as a registered dietitian, but also so importantly that you can bring your expertise and experience working with and walking alongside Christian women in a culture that is so challenging when it comes to food, managing that, managing our lifestyles, and living in a way that we want to honor God with our lives. So I am super excited for you to be here today. And this conversation is very personal for me. I've shared a little bit of my story with you, Brittany, but after our son died, I had this very much of a disconnect, I think, with my own body because I was in so much stress and drama. And I took on this relationship with food that I didn't really understand. It was kind of bizarre because I couldn't sleep. So we'll talk a little bit about all of these things, but because it's been such a big part of my grief journey, and then I have encountered it with the moms that I work with inside the grief roadmap and in the one-on-ones, that they're managing the same thing because as grieving moms, we reach out for something to comfort us because there is no comfort. And for me, I would get up in the middle of the night and just move around, just literally trying to find some place where I could rest enough to go to sleep. And then I would wake up the next day and I knew that I was eating, but I had no idea the volume of food that I was eating. So that was a bizarre experience for me for being able to understand. So I hope we can bring some clarity to that today. So let's just dive in. Ready? Let's
All
just
right,
do it.
let's do it.
Okay. So what do you tend to see in women when they're hurting deeply? And you and I have had this conversation before. Grief can have not just grief, but pain can have many faces. But what do you tend to see when women are hurting deeply and it starts to show up in their relationship with food?
Oh my goodness. Gosh, Teresa, I know you know this so well, preaching to the choir probably. And for so many of you listening, food is just one way. Nutrition, it's this thing that we do every day, right? You experience hunger on a regular basis. Most people do, at least. And so when you have something that is so disruptive, something traumatic that happens, it creates this emotional inconsistency. It creates this like life. A lot of times trauma creates a major disruption in our life in some way. And so when it comes to your relationship with food, if you feel like, hey, there's these things that are out of my control, we oftentimes look to what is in my life that I can tangibly get a grip on. To like, these are the words I hear so often from my clients. Like, I need to hold on to something that feels stable, that I have some say so in, because this thing happened to me or around me or to someone that I love. I had no say so in it. I feel like the control was ripped away. And now I'm just grasping for something that feels stable or immovable. And we know the Lord can provide that for us, but it's so easy and tempting to say, I need something tangible. Because when you're experiencing grief, when you're experiencing a severe level of grief and other types of trauma, it is almost necessary sometimes. We feel that need to, I gotta get, can't think about this anymore. I gotta get out of my head. And
Mm.
so oftentimes the way that so many people cope with that is, okay, I need something physical and tangible. So I have something else to pay attention to than what's going on in my head. So when someone is hurting really deeply, like you said, from a practical, observable side of things, oftentimes that is our relationship with food. It can go one of 100 different ways. There's not just restricting or binging, there's so many different degrees of that. So I have seen women that are dealing with grief and other types of trauma that use food to meet a need like comfort, or food feels safe because they can sit at home and have those closed doors, and it just becomes that, again, means of consistency or stability. And that's our go to. It can become a go to when you're feeling unsafe or you need some comfort, or honestly, when you need to numb out. It can also go the other way where you say, I don't want to feel anything. And I see women restrict. And it goes to the other side where they lose their appetite and don't have a will to eat. And there's everything in between. That's the kind of big picture of oftentimes what I see when someone is hurting really deeply, is that sometimes their relationship with food can be one of the very first things that changes. And sometimes it lasts a long time, sometimes it's short, but if it's chronic, and oftentimes if there's not some type of intervention, even when you don't realize it, it can get out of hand a lot more quickly than you anticipate.
Oh, wow. You said so much there that I want to touch on because I completely agree with you that we are searching for something to comfort us, and the availability of food, I think, is
Yeah.
one aspect. And then for us as Christian women, it's a safe thing. It's not something we consider out of bounds. It's not, we're not binging on alcohol. It's like
Hmm.
food. It's a good thing, you know,
Yeah.
in the Christian world. I grew up, I'm much older than you, Brittany, but you probably experienced too in churches, we eat. That's what we do. We
Yeah.
eat, you
Oh,
know.
yeah.
And especially in the grief space, that's what people do. They bring you food. But I
Hmm.
love how you addressed both sides of the restricting and the binging because in my personal journey, I lost 15 pounds in the first 2 weeks because I didn't
Hmm.
eat. I don't even think I drank anything. I was just in a world that I really can't describe. But initially, I lost weight. Food looked repulsive to me, the smell of it.
Hmm.
Like when people would bring food in, I would have to go to the other room. But then that it switched. So you said, I love what you said because it can go from one or the other and then it can change without us
Yeah.
really being
Back and
able to
forth.
yes, I love that.
Hmm.
Thank you so much that you did such a great job explaining exactly what can happen inside the world of those of us that have lost our children. I want you to touch on emotional pain and the craving for food. Is there a physical connection? Is there a mental connection? Is it based on our environments? What's really going on underneath of that? Could you speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, so cravings are such an interesting thing because you can get physiological cravings, and you can also have cravings that are a result of something thought-based or mental. So if you have a tendency to manage or to try and deal with your grief from that restriction side of things, or really from the emotional eating, maybe eating more than you normally would feel comfortable eating, from a physiological standpoint, that can really mess with our hormones and our blood sugar. And we might have big spikes when we eat a lot of things that are quickly digestible sources of carbohydrate, maybe without some protein or fiber or other nutrients. And then if we go a while without eating, or if we have a quick blood sugar response that drops your blood sugar, that's really when cravings hit from a physiological standpoint. And so often I hear women go, well, I just don't have enough willpower or discipline to say no, when it's this physiological response that you had a blood sugar drop. And it it's a very nutritional physiological thing, and so that does happen, and that can happen when your relationship with food or when your consistency with eating looks different than it normally would, and that's pretty typical when you're going through something really traumatic. You're probably not very connected with your body's physical cues, natural physical cues. Grief can drastically throw off your ability to recognize and perceive normal cues like hunger and fullness that maybe you're typically regulated, but we can get into, I almost hate to use the word distraction, but when our brain gets so focused on something else, we have a lot harder time connecting with our body. And so a lot of times I see a lot of guilt and shame that women say, I like shouldn't be doing this, or I feel so bad. I just ate this thing, or I completely forgot to eat today and I'm just realizing it. And it's because they're having a hard time perceiving hunger and fullness. And that can create a lot of emotional changes as well. And so you can have the physical side that happens when your relationship with food changes and your patterns change. But from an emotional craving standpoint, this happens a lot too when food or restraining from food, either one, is helping to meet some sort of a need. So, like we mentioned, comfort or numbing out or safety, or a lot of times it is a means of trying to get control or trying to reduce anxiety and having that tangible experience of eating to get out of your head. There's so many different needs that food can meet. And so, from the emotional side, when you have a big emotional need that needs to be met and it's not getting met in an effective way, that can create mental cravings as well. And so this is not a bad thing, but when we default to only food, we can think of food as a tool in the toolbox. If I've had a hard day and maybe it's something very light, maybe it's not necessarily really tough grief, but it's just been a hard day. I may come home and go, I need something that's comforting. Or today's really not like I've had no source of enjoyment or pleasure today. I really need that. And if I have that awareness, that's okay. I can use some food to do that. I can have something to eat. But usually, when you're in a stage of deep grief, you don't have that level of awareness. And so, when you have a craving for something, oftentimes it's something very specific. And that's a pretty helpful way of going, am I actually like physically hungry? Is this a physical craving or is it emotional? Because if it's physical, a lot of different foods could satisfy that need. If it's emotional, it's usually, hey, this particular food or this type of food. And maybe it's a food that you enjoyed with the person that you lost. And it's you have that nostalgic connection to it, that personal connection. And you just go, I just really want to remember this feeling of having this thing or celebrating with this food at this birthday event or whatever it might be. And those get really strong and they are just as valid as the physical cravings. The thing that I would encourage listeners with here is don't let the shame be on you when that happens. It's a very typical response. And it's not to say you can't eat or food can't be a tool to help with some of those emotional, but something that will help you feel physically and mentally better in the long run is to go, okay, how can I build the awareness and get back in tune with my body so that when I do use food to help meet an emotional need, I can tell when that need has been met and I don't push past the point of now I just feel physically or emotionally sick or blah afterwards, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do want to mention if you're listening, I know that we're kind of going deep, Brittany and I, on what
Mm-hmm.
is underneath this, but stay tuned because Brittany has created a needs assessment for you, and I can't wait to share that with you. And she's going to tell you all about that here in a few minutes. So if you're wondering, like, how in the world am I going to be able to tell any of this? Stick with us because Brittany has created
We'll
something
make it
just
simple.
for you. We'll make it simple. But I do want to, so something you said, I really want to touch on for a minute because food has very much an emotional connection to. And you
Yeah.
mentioned that. And I'll just tell this quick story. Andrew loves sweet potato casserole and really is like our favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in the country and sweet potatoes was something that my mom used to make mashed sweet potatoes like we eat
Mm-hmm.
regular white potatoes, but I
Yeah.
made this sweet potato casserole and he loved it. Well, when Andrew went to heaven, I swore I would never make it again because it was kind of our
Mm,
thing. So that's
yeah.
that emotional connection, I think, that you were talking to, is that
Yeah.
it can either bring us comfort. I ate this with with my person, or
Hmm.
the person that we're missing, and or
Hmm.
you could go the direction I did. And it was probably 2 years. I did not make sweet potato casserole because I would see him. He'd come in the house and he would go straight to the fridge, get a spoon, and start eating it out of the bowl. And that was just too much for me to bear because I thought I'm not going to
Yeah.
get to eat that with him. So I can't make that again. So I
Yeah.
loved how you pointed out the emotional connections that we can have with food. It can either push us away or it could drive us
Hmm.
closer. And I think awareness, Brittany, is so important. And I think your needs assessment is going to be great for my listeners because we don't, it's very difficult to connect the dots because the next
Yeah.
place I really want to move is to actually talk about the disconnect that we feel in our bodies because
Yeah.
our routines change. When we experience trauma, before Andrew's death, I was at the gym probably 3, 4 days a week. I walked. All of that just completely went away. And I think it would be good for us to talk about the disconnection that we feel in our bodies, especially how it influences us around the food piece, around movement, and around body
Mhm.
awareness. You kind of touched on that a little bit, but let's go a
Mhm.
little bit deeper just to give the listeners an idea like, look, I'm not losing my mind. This is something that is really happening. I'm not just imagining this.
There are so many things, Teresa, that can disconnect us from our body. And when I say disconnect, there's this fancy term called interoceptive awareness. And essentially, it's just the idea of being aware of what's going on in your body. So, hunger and fullness cues are two types of this awareness of going, okay, I can tell the signals my body is giving me when I'm hungry. A lot of times people don't necessarily move past, okay, my stomach's growling, so I'm hungry, or it feels really full, so I'm done. There are so many more things that we can look for, so many more clues to help us recognize hunger and fullness. However, there are also a lot of things that can throw those off. And it's not just hunger and fullness. When I have I'm married to a big kid. My precious husband has a great sense of humor, and he has passed that on to my children. And so when my oldest son, he loves to sneak around the house. And so when I'll sometimes be coming out of my office or around the corner, and he'll jump out from, behind a wall or something and say, boo, and I will jump out of my skin, right? I can start feeling my heart racing, I'm breathing heavier, start noticing that. That's a level of interoceptive awareness going, okay, I can tell my heart's beating more. I can tell things about my body are changing. And it's because I'm in that like fight or flight sort of response. But we can do that unknowingly sometimes. We can get disconnected from our body where if I had a really hard day and I wasn't like I was all in my head and I came around the corner and my son jumped out, I would probably be less likely to respond as much if I'm distracted thinking about something else and I'm not focused. And so that same thing can happen when you are in a state of grief is to go so all in my head and in my feelings about this really hard thing that has happened to me or around me that we don't recognize what's going on in our bodies. We don't recognize when we're hungry or maybe when we're starting to feel full or when we're past the point of comfortable fullness or when we've got a headache because we're so dehydrated because we haven't had enough to drink or when we're so physically exhausted that we've got brain fog and we can't focus on anything and we ask somebody sitting next to us trying to comfort us or tell us something and we have to what did you just say? And so when you're really disconnected from your body, you can almost feel like your body's against you sometimes or like a body's an enemy. If it's giving you signals, hey, you need to eat, and you're so frustrated that you mentioned like sometimes you just backed away from food, right? You didn't even want to eat. We can almost get at odds with our body sometimes. You want me to do this thing for you to take care of you, but I can't take care of you right now. I can't take care of anything. It's a normal response when you are in that kind of level of grief or trauma. And that can significantly influence your relationship with food, how much or how frequently you choose to nourish your body. Movement can happen the same way on both ends, just like food can. You can completely retract for a movement and go, I just want to stay in bed. I want to stay, I want to have a blanket around me. I just need to sit in a ball and cry. Or like when I was in college, I had a friend who was over at my apartment and started severely seizing. This was like one of my close friends. And I remember after the ambulance came and took her to check her out, she ended up being okay. But I was like, I have to get out. And I just went for a run. And I am not a runner, but I went out and I was like, I need to like I gotta get out of my head. I had so much stress and built up tension that my body needed the physical relief, and I pushed myself too far running. Like I overdid it because I was so in my head about what was going on. And so it's really easy to get disconnected from your body when you have really big, really hard emotions. And again, this is another place you have to give yourself some grace and let go of the shame to go, I am dealing with this thing in the best way that I know how right now. And if that's where you are, it is okay to seek some support. That does not make you weak. That doesn't mean like, hey, I should be able to deal with this. It is normal for a lot of these things to happen when you're dealing with something really hard.
I know you have a course that you take your clients through.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a time that you mention or encourage them to actually get like a blood work panel? Or sometimes you've probably heard of the Dutch urine test that can look
Mm-hmm.
for things like cortisol levels, the catecholamines that are very
Mm-hmm.
active when we're,
Yeah.
in a trauma response. Do
Yeah.
you have something in your program that directs them toward that, or do you offer something like that in your program?
So I don't do direct lab testing. I do sometimes, I have a couple of providers that I trust that I regularly refer when someone has been experiencing chronic stress. There's going to be a greater level of acute stress when a traumatic something first happens. And then there may be some lingering chronic stress for quite a while. So that's not something I typically recommend from the very get go unless the food related behaviors get really severe really quickly. So if there is a lot of restriction, if there is a lot of overeating or binging, or there's a lot of vacillating back and forth, that is so easy to happen. And let me just normalize that for a second, that when there's a lot of restriction, it can be really easy to not recognize hunger until it's super severe. And then you go, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten in 2 days. And then you eat to the point of sickness because your body's trying to help you survive. And then there's like this guilt, or just sometimes just that physical, like, I feel unwell. I can't eat now for a while. And this back and forth, I can really mess with your hormones too.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily recommend like the hormonal testing or getting a blood panel really early on unless that is happening really severely for a couple weeks at a time. And then you may need some medical support early on if it's getting to that point. If you start getting really lightheaded, really dizzy, losing energy really quickly and needing to sit down, like those are some signs you probably need to have something like an EKG or get your electrolytes checked to monitor heart related electrolytes. So that may be something early on. And then, yeah, I think it can absolutely be helpful to do. There's various types of hormone testing that can be helpful from like a lab office, from a physician office, but also there's some great functional tests that can be helpful as well. So I have some great referral sources that I point people to. And then when they get their labs and their results, a lot of times we can work with that. And then we can go, okay, based on what you received and what's going on, here's some things we can really work on from a practical food nutrition standpoint, but also a relationship with food standpoint, so that we're not only trying to put a band-aid on the behaviors, but we're really seeing what are the driving factors to all of the big changes.
I want to talk about those driving factors, but before we go there, I think you just brought up a really good point, because when you're in the middle of a trauma response, you're not thinking about all the facts that we know about the body and how the body works. However,
Mhm.
our brain is mostly water. We're in a state of fight or flight, and our bodies are demanding things of us, yet we are not able, as you said, I love the way you said
Mhm.
that, in this disconnect from the body thing, we cannot grasp that our body is knocking on our door telling us what we need.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for us to point out, Brittany, that nutrition is extremely important, as well as movement. We can get really technical here, but we get all of these toxins build up when we're not eating properly. We can get all these toxins build up in our bodies, and if we're not drinking, they're not getting eliminated. If we're not moving our muscles, we're not pushing our blood through our bodies the way that we need to. So this is a very deep subject that you and I are broaching today, and we're just
Yeah.
literally kind of just touching the surface.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important that what we're doing today is bringing awareness to the listener, because that's the first step. And I know you agree with me in that we need that piece of
Yeah.
what is really going on. So let's talk about that. I'd like for you to tell us what, with your experience, what's underneath those driving behaviors.
Mhm.
And let's give the listeners at least one step, give them one step in the direction that they need to go in coming out of this, because it's like being in battle. And what the thought just
Yeah.
came to my mind is kind of like being in the foxhole. You're fighting a battle, not only mentally, physically, spiritually. It is
Yeah.
trauma brings spiritual war to our doorstep. And so there's so much going on here.
Yeah.
So let's start there. Let's talk about the driving behaviors and then a step that they can take and toward the direction of awareness.
So we have touched on these a little bit, but oftentimes it is some very specific need that you've got to have met. And needs are absolutely valid when you're experiencing severe grief. You have a lot of needs. And so often, and you mentioned this so beautifully a minute ago, Teresa, it's hard for us to meet our own needs when we're in that kind of state. We need support from family, from friends, from the people that are around us. And so a lot of the things that tend to be at the root or tend to drive a lot of behaviors, whether they're food, body related or otherwise, are this desire to meet a need. And so I'll give you um, a random, like kind of unrelated example just to help you get the idea. But when my alarm goes off in the morning, I have a pretty chronic habit of hitting the snooze button. It gives me the opportunity to ask myself, like, okay, what do I actually really need right now? Do I need more sleep? Probably. I probably do. I have a lot of reasons I might need a little more sleep. And it's also this process of going, okay, got to recognize what I need. And at the same time, I can't let my body be the main factor driving the bus. And being able to practice, and this is so hard. This is why it's so important to have somebody that you can talk to, whether it can be somebody that you work with, it could be a provider or a coach, but having somebody even in person or that you can hop on a phone with to go, I'm experiencing all these things and I don't even know what I need right now. I feel like that's such a common thing. Like when I am speaking with someone who has lost a loved one or who's gone through something hard, and I'm like, what do you need right now? So often it's like, I don't even know. I don't know what I need right now. It's just not this. That can make it really hard to identify what you actually need. So you can ask yourself some, if you're trying to figure out from a physiological standpoint, is there something physically that I need to be met right now? You can do a quick like 15 to 30-second body scan. And all that involves is like head to toe going, I'm going to just sit here. This takes no energy, no, like very little effort. Just sit here and go, okay, what am I actually noticing? No judgment, no, what does this mean yet? Just what's happening in my body. It's a really helpful way to just get reconnected with where you are right now and try to get you kind of out of your head and back in your body so that you have a better idea of what you do need. So even just like sitting here, I can't feel a whole lot going on in my head right now. I don't have air blowing on me. There's nothing that I'm just like noticing other than I smacked my head on the playground the other day and I can still feel I have a little bit of bruise, right? I can feel the bruise a little bit, how it's tender, and then I can feel my hair on my ears. We were talking about this before you hit record. You mentioned being trying to get over some sickness. I'm getting over some stuffiness because here in central Alabama, our weather is unpredictable and it's 50 degrees in the morning and then it's like 85 degrees in the afternoon. So I'm going, okay, I'm a little stuffy and I can work my way down and just recognize what's happening in my body. Then if I go, okay, I'm getting to my stomach and going, okay, it kind of, I don't really feel majorly hungry or majorly full, but it does feel sort of empty. It can just be a quick little reminder like, okay, check in with yourself. When was the last time I ate? Has it been more than 3 or 4 hours? Okay, even if I'm not feeling hungry, that's probably I probably need to just do a little, this is self care. Okay, self care is not just paint your nails and go to the spa. Like it's taking care of yourself, and you don't have to earn or deserve that. You need that even more so when you're hurting. And it's so easy to just let our bodies kind of push our bodies to the side when we're hurting, but it's going to make you more able to deal with the grief when you're taking care of your body, even just a little bit. And so, even going, okay, well, I'm not hungry, but I can tell that I'm also not satisfied or full right now. What's something that I can eat so I don't have that blood sugar plummet and then can't focus and all these things. That's a body scan is just a quick practical tool to help you start recognizing that from a physiological need standpoint. And then there are, and I'll give you guys the link for the needs assessment, but I have found with however many clients I've worked with at this point, several hundred, being able to go, okay, there's 7 needs that frequently show up that I have seen that we typically use food or lack of food, restriction of food to meet. And when you can identify what is that top 1 or 2, maybe even 3 needs, typically it's 1 or 2 that's going to be the strongest. Those needs are often getting met with a specific type of behavior. And the need that ends up driving something like overeating or emotional eating or binge eating might be a very different need than what happens when you restrict or when you oversleep or when you isolate yourself. There's so many different things. That body scan would be just like a quick first step, I would say, for someone who's like, I don't know what I need right now. I don't know how well I'm taking care of myself. Taking 15 to 30 seconds and just doing that quick physical check in.
That's great. And it's something you said, I want to come back to, because as grieving moms, we can live in the land of guilt. And you said self-care, you don't have to earn it and you don't have to deserve it. And I love that. And I hope that resonated with everybody who's listening, because we can move in almost into a punishment mode when we're
Mhm.
grieving, because we evaluate everything that we did wrong and everything that we did right disappears. But we can live in that space, and
Mhm.
that can be a real driving behavior underneath what we're doing with food, because we're trying to get rid of that guilt with the food and we're overeating, or we're trying to punish ourselves and say, you don't deserve to eat because your child's not
Mhm.
here and you're the reason why. This is such a great topic, Brittany. I feel like we could just keep talking for another hour. I just appreciate you so much, and being able to bring something to the table. The body scan, this, I'm sitting here thinking, just thank you, Lord, for this, because one of the things I teach the moms that I work with, it's a practice that I started when I didn't want to open my eyes to the nightmare of my life. I thought, if I could lay here in the bed and keep my eyes closed and not open them, that this life that I'm now living is not real. And over time, what I replaced that with was a prayer that said, you know what, Lord, before I open my eyes, I know that I can't do this today. I cannot do this on my own. I need your strength. And it just led and has morphed over time. November will be 8 years since Andrew went to heaven. But it's a practice. When you were talking about setting your alarm and hit the snooze, it's a practice
Mhm.
that I've incorporated. And so I love that, the body scan thing. So if you're someone who's been listening to my podcast for a while, I'm sure you've heard me talk about that prayer. This is just something you can add into that, right? What are my needs today? Let's become aware of what's inside of our bodies, what our needs are, because I think that's such a great tip, Brittany, because it's hard to explain the disconnection I think that we have with our bodies when we experience the trauma. It's like you mentioned several times, we can move out of our heads, but that's where we live, is in our heads, and these thought patterns that drive our behaviors, whether they're correct or incorrect. So I love the body
Mhm.
scan. Thank you so much. And I'll link that in the show notes, and share with us too. Share the resources with the listeners, what you actually offer and what you do with the moms that you work with, or the Christian, I should say, the Christian women that you work with.
Yeah, thank you. If you're sitting here and you're thinking like, I'm in that stage, I don't even always know what I need, or when I'm reaching down for another spoonful of whatever it is mechanically, and I got to the bottom of the bowl and I don't even know how that happened. It's meeting some sort of a need. So the needs assessment is just a free resource that has become one of my clients' favorite, like early on resources to help them go, okay, I'm sitting here trying to play with putty or knit or do something with my hands so that I don't eat, but it's it works for like 15 seconds because you're not actually meeting the need. So you can take the needs assessment. It's a quick like checklist style quiz that will help you identify what top 1 to 2 needs each behavior you're struggling with this meeting. So you can do take it a behavior at a time. And you can grab that for free at brittanybraswellrd.com/needs. And if you're in a place where you really know, especially for your relationship with food or your body or the Lord, combination of these, has just really gotten to a place of disconnect, I would love to give you some additional support and resources. The way that I serve the women that I work with in this area is through the Joy Filled Eater course. And it is specifically designed to be a Christ-centered approach to food freedom and body image with the Lord at the center of the process. And it is the joy of my life. It is one of my most favorite things that I get to do. So you can find out more about that at brittanybraswellrd.com/course if you want to check out the details, or you can just hang out with me on my podcast. I'm over at Faith Filled Food Freedom, and right now we have episodes every week, and would love to support you there for free and get you some extra support and resources there every Tuesday.
Thank you, Brittany, for sharing your wisdom with us. And I will link your podcast. I will link the needs assessment in the show notes so that you can have direct access to it. And I just want my listeners to know I trust Brittany. I have spent some time with her. We've been in coaching groups together. So this would be a great resource. I wish I would have known about you when I was in the early stages of my grief. Let's just put it that way. So it's a great privilege that I'm able to share this resource with those that I serve. Thank you, Brittany, for coming today. I just love you with the love of the Lord. I'm so thankful for your wisdom that you imparted on us today.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm so appreciative of all the incredible work that you are doing here. And we'll continue to pray and bless you and this show and all of your listeners who tune in every week.
Yeah, it takes the body of Christ, does it not? He's given us all
gifts.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And that is all I have for you today, guys. So until next time, take care.